On a freezing winter day, a kind-hearted waitress saw two shivering orphans walk into her diner. They had no money, only hunger in their eyes. She gave them a warm meal, not knowing that this single act of kindness would come back to her in the most unexpected way. 18 years later, when a helicopter landed right outside her home. "Ma'am, we don't have any money." The words came out so softly, Angela almost didn't hear them over the sound of the coffee machine. It was the middle of winter, the kind of cold that bites through every layer of clothing. Snowflakes floated lazily outside the window of Rosie's diner, settling on the frosted glass before melting away. Inside, the smell of fresh coffee and hot soup wrapped the place in warmth, like a blanket against the icy world outside. Angela, a young waitress with kind brown eyes and a warm smile, was wiping down the counter. It was a quiet afternoon. Only a few regulars sat at the booths, sipping coffee and chatting about the weather. Then the bell above the door jingled. Two children stepped inside. The boy was about 11, tall for his age but thin, his shoulders hunched as if he were trying to make himself invisible. Beside him was a girl no older than 8, clutching his arms so tightly her knuckles turned white. Their clothes were worn far too light for the bitter cold, and their cheeks were flushed red from the biting wind. Angela's heart ached instantly. She had seen all kinds of customers walk through the doors of Rosie's: businessmen in suits, truck drivers with tired eyes, young couples on dates, but she had never seen anyone look quite so fragile. She walked over slowly, crouching a little so she could meet their eyes. "Hey there," she said gently, her voice warm and steady. "You two okay?" The boy glanced at his sister before answering. His lips trembled, not just from the cold, but from the weight of his words. "We're hungry, but we can't pay." Angela froze for half a second. She took in the sight of their shivering bodies, the way the little girl's eyes dart nervously around the diner, as if expecting someone to kick them out. Without another word, she straightened up. "You don't worry about the money, sweetheart," she said softly. "Let me get you something hot." She guided them to a booth near the heater, the warmest spot in the diner, and hurried back to the kitchen. Her hands moved quickly as she ladled steaming soup into 2 bowls, the rich aroma of chicken and vegetables filling the air. She added slices of warm bread on the side and poured 2 mugs of hot cocoa, piling whipped cream on top. When she returned to the booth, the children's eyes lit up. They didn't wait for her to say "enjoy" before they started eating. It was as if they hadn't had a real meal in days. They ate fast, but not carelessly. Every bite seemed to be treasured. Angela stood nearby for a moment, just watching them. She didn't ask too many questions. She didn't need to. The story was written in their faces, the hollow cheeks, the nervous glances, the way they held on to each other, like they were the only family they had left. After a while, the boy slowed down, glancing up at her. "I'm Daniel, and this is my sister, Lily." His voice cracked slightly when he added, "Our parents, they died last year." Angela felt a lump form in her throat. She wanted to reach across the table and hug them both, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I can't imagine what you've been through." Daniel looked away, staring into his cocoa. "We've been staying with people here and there, but it's not always safe." Angela swallowed hard. The diner's old clock ticked loudly in the background, but the moment felt suspended in time. She remembered her own childhood, the struggles her mother went through to keep food on the table. Maybe that's why she couldn't just treat these kids like customers. She saw something of herself in them. She went back to the kitchen, packed sandwiches in paper bags, and wrapped them carefully so the bread would stay fresh. When she returned, she placed the bags on the table. "Here, for later." Lily's eyes widened. "For us?" Angela smiled. Of course. And remember this, if you ever need help, if you're ever hungry, you come find me. I'll always feed you. Always. The two children exchanged a look before sliding out of the booth. They hugged her, a long, desperate hug that told Angela just how little kindness they had known lately. Then, with their sandwiches in hand, they stepped out into the snowy night and disappeared into the darkness. Angela stood by the window for a long time after they left, watching the snow swallow their small figures. She didn't know it then, but that night would be the start of a story she would carry in her heart forever. A story that 18 years later would come back to her in a way she could never have imagined. The cold air rushed in as Daniel and Lily stepped out of Rosie's diner, clutching their paper bags like they were treasures. Angela followed them to the door, watching as their small figures disappeared down the snow-covered street. A part of her wanted to run after them, to ask where they were staying, to bring them home with her. But she knew the world wasn't that simple. She had rent to pay, long shifts to work, and barely enough space in her tiny apartment for herself. Still, something inside her whispered that this wasn't the last time she'd see them. That night, as she walked home through the crunching snow, Angela replayed the look in their eyes over and over. The way Daniel tried to be strong for his sister, the way Lily clung to him for safety. It stayed with her like a weight she couldn't set down. The next morning, she stopped by the corner store before her shift. She bought extra loaves of bread, canned soup, and small bottles of juice. She stored them in a box under the counter at the diner, just in case the children returned. Days passed, then weeks. They didn't come back. Winter turned to spring, and the memory of that night became something like a dream, bittersweet and unfinished. But Angela never forgot her promise. Every time she looked toward the diner door when the bell rang, she half expected to see Daniel and Lily standing there. One rainy afternoon, months later, it happened. The bell jingled, and there they were, a little taller, still wearing mismatched clothes, but their faces lit up the second they saw her. Lily ran straight to Angela and hugged her around the waist. "You came back," Angela said softly, kneeling to meet their eyes. Daniel smiled shyly. "We were close by, and we remembered what you said." Angela's heart warmed. She fed them again, slipping extra food into their bags when no one was looking. She didn't pry about where they were staying. She could tell they weren't ready to share. But she made them promise something before they left. "If you're ever in trouble," she said firmly, "and you have nowhere to go, you find me. It doesn't matter if it's day or night. I mean it." They nodded. Daniel's voice was quiet but certain. "We will." Over the next couple of years, Angela saw them a few more times. Sometimes they came to the diner on their own. Sometimes it was after a long stretch where she feared the worst. Each time, she fed them without question. She didn't know if she was making a real difference. She just knew that in a world that often turned away from people in need, she wanted to be the kind of person who didn't. And then, they stopped coming altogether. Angela told herself they were okay. Maybe they'd found a permanent home. Maybe they were going to school. She hoped they were safe. Years rolled by. Life became a steady rhythm of early mornings, double shifts, and quiet evenings in her small home. Her hair had a few more strands of silver now, and her hands bore the faint ache of years spent carrying heavy trays. But deep down, she still thought of them sometimes. It was a cold December morning when everything changed. Angela was sitting in her living room, wrapped in a thick blanket, sipping coffee, when a deep rumble shook the walls. It wasn't thunder. It was steady, mechanical, growing louder by the second. She set her mug down and stepped outside. Her jaw dropped. A helicopter sleek, black, and gleaming in the winter sun, was descending into the empty field next to her house. Snow whipped around in wild swirls from the force of the blades. Angela shielded her eyes against the wind, heart racing. This wasn't the kind of thing that happened in her quiet little neighborhood. The helicopter touched down with a roar. The door swung open. Two tall figures stepped out, a man in a tailored dark coat and a woman in a vibrant red scarf. They began walking toward her, and then she saw it. The way they smiled, the way their eyes held something deeply familiar. Angela's breath caught in her throat. Angela gripped the edge of her porch railing, her heart pounding in her chest. The man and woman stepped closer, their boots crunching in the snow. The wind from the helicopter blades died down, and the sudden quiet made her pulse even louder in her ears. The man's eyes were locked on hers. There was a softness there, something deep and personal. Then he smiled. "Angela?" he called out. She hesitated, still trying to place his face. "Yes," she replied, her voice uncertain. That smile widened. "It's me, Daniel, and this is my sister, Lily." Angela's breath hitched. Her hand flew to her mouth. She hadn't heard those names in nearly 2 decades, yet they rang in her ears like they had just been spoken yesterday at the diner booth. "Daniel, Lily," she whispered. Lily stepped forward first, tears already brimming in her eyes. You don't know how long we've been looking for you," she said, her voice trembling. Before Angela could respond, Lily wrapped her arms around her in a fierce hug, the same kind of hug she'd given as a little girl, only now she was taller, stronger, grown. Angela hugged her back, the years melting away in an instant. Her eyes met Daniel's over Lily's shoulder, and she could see him fighting to keep his composure. "When we were kids," Daniel began, "you were the first person who treated us like we mattered. That day in your diner, you didn't just feed us, Angela. You gave us hope." Angela blinked back tears, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just did what anyone should do." Daniel shook his head firmly. "No, you did what most people wouldn't." The three of them stood there in the snow for a moment, the weight of 18 years of untold stories hanging in the air. Finally, Daniel gestured toward the helicopter. "We came here today not just to thank you, but to give you something." Angela frowned, confused. "Give me something? You don't owe me anything." "Yes, we do," Lily interrupted, smiling through her tears. "We owe you everything." Daniel took a deep breath and continued. "After that winter, we were taken in by a foster family who cared for us. We worked hard, went to college, started a company. We've been blessed with more than we ever imagined. But through all of it, we never stopped thinking about the waitress who saved us when we were at our lowest." Angela felt her chest tighten. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Daniel replied softly. "Just come with us." Angela hesitated at the edge of her porch, glancing from the helicopter to Daniel and Lily. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "Why the helicopter? Why now?" Daniel stepped closer, his eyes warm but serious. "Because the person who saved our lives deserves more than just a thank you. You gave 2 freezing, hungry children a meal when you had nothing to gain. Now it's our turn to give back." Lily reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. She placed it gently into Angela's hands. "Open it," she urged. Angela slid her fingers under the flap and unfolded the papers inside. Her breath caught. "Property documents." She looked up in disbelief. "This is a house, not just any house," Lily said, smiling. "It's yours, debt-free, fully furnished. We've stocked it with everything you could ever need. You'll never have to worry about rent or bills again." Angela's knees felt weak. She stared at them, words failing her. I can't accept this. Yes, you can, Daniel said gently. Angela, when we were kids, that meal felt like a miracle. We had nothing, and you gave us everything you could. You made us feel seen, like we mattered. That kindness stayed with us all these years, and it's why we've spent so long trying to find you. Tears welled up in Angela's eyes, blurring her vision. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. Lily stepped forward, taking her hand. You didn't just feed us. You gave us the strength to keep going. And now, we want to make sure you never have to struggle again. Angela swallowed hard, her hands trembling as she clutched the documents. The snow was falling gently around them now, soft and quiet, as if the world itself was pausing for this moment. Daniel grinned. And there's one more thing. We're not just giving you a house. We're taking you there right now. Angela blinked, stunned. Right now? Right now, Lily said with a laugh. Dinner's already waiting, and this time, we're the ones serving you. Angela let out a shaky laugh, wiping her tears. You too. You have no idea what this means to me. Daniel looked her in the eyes. Actually, we do.